Video homework video for the homework assigned from section 9.5. It's on page 552. You're assigned problems 6, 8, 16, 18, 26, 28, 34, 36. That's 8 problems. I'm going to do half of them, so I'm going to do 4. I will start by doing number 6. So the first set of problems, you have to find the solution using the zero product property. So here you have a pair of polynomials being multiplied against each other and they're equal to 0. So the way you solve this particular problem, you set each one of these binomials equal to 0 by themselves. So c plus 6 equals to 0 and c plus 8 equals to 0. And then you solve them separately. So to solve this particular equation, you subtract 6 from both sides. So then c equals to negative 6. And to solve this particular equation, you subtract 8 from both sides. So then c equals to negative 8. So the solution to this problem set is negative 6 and negative 8. As simple as that. So let's go on and do number 18 next. So for number 18, you're supposed to find the common factors. So you're essentially supposed to factor out the common factors. So I'm going to look at the two different monomials here and figure out what do they have in common. I'm going to rewrite it like this. I'm going to write this as 7 times w to the third times w to the second. It's the same thing. W to the fifth is the same thing as w to the third times w to the second. And this monomial, I'm going to rewrite it as 7 times 5 times w to the second. This makes it a little easier to see what they have in common. They have a 7 in common, and then they have a w squared in common. So anything that they have in common, you can factor out. So I'm going to factor out a 7. I'm going to factor out a w to the second. Once I do that, what's left for this monomial is just a w to the third power. And what's left for this monomial is just the 5. So that's essentially it. That's the problem. That's all you're asked to do is factor it out. So the answer is 7w to the second. And in the parentheses is w to the third minus 5. So outside of the parentheses is what was common for the two of them. And inside the parentheses is what was uncommon. And if you were to multiply this out or distribute this back in, you should get your original problem if you so choose. So that was 18. So for the next problem set, I'm going to do 28 from there. And this is a bit of a combo problem. First, you have to factor out your common factors, and then you do something similar to what we did in the first set. So I'm going to factor this out first, and then what I get, I'm going to individually set to 0. So again, I'm going to rewrite this in a form that's easier to see. So the 18 is essentially 6 times 3 times c times c. Plus, and the 6c is just 6 times c. So what do they have in common? They have a 6 in common, and they have the variable c in common. So I want to factor out that, exactly what they have in common. The 6 and the c. What's left in the parentheses from the first monomial is a 3 and another c, so 3c. Well, there's nothing left from this monomial. We factored everything out, so we can write a 1 plus 1, still equal to 0. So I did my factoring. Now I have to find my solution by setting each of these to be equal to 0. So I'm going to say that 6c is equal to 0 and 3c plus 1 is equal to 0. So I'm going to solve this. Divide by 6 on both sides. So in this case, 0 divided by 6, well, it's still 0. So c equals to 0. And in this case, I'm going to first subtract 1 from both sides. So I'm going to get 3c equals to negative 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide everything by a 3. Which gives me c equals to negative 1/3. So those are my two solutions, 0 and negative 1/3 for number 28. Lastly, I'm going to do problem number 36 from the last problem set. Here you're asked to find the roots of the polynomial. It's essentially just like the problem before this, except it's not set to 0, so it's not equal to 0, and to find the solutions you'll have to make it equal to 0. But before we do that, we have to factor out whatever they have in common. So again, I'm going to write this out in a form that's a bit more easier to see. So I have 2 times 2 times x from this monomial minus 2 times x. So what do they have in common? They have 2 and they have an x in common. So I'm going to factor out a 2, I'm going to factor out an x. So what's left here is another 2, another x. What's left here? Nothing, because I factored the 2 and the x out. So again, we write a minus 1. Now to find the roots, this is where you have to do anything new, is just set it equal to 0. That's it. And now you solve it like the problem before. You set them both to 0. And then you just solve the equations. Over here we divide both sides by 2, and 0 divided by 2 is 0. And over here I'm going to first add 1 to both sides. So then 2x equals to just a positive 1. And then I'm going to divide both sides by a 2. That means x equals to just a half, which means my roots, or my answers, are 0 and 1/2. So if you have any more questions, I'll work out the other problems in class. Thank you.